when we talk about worshiping the Lord, sometimes I lose sight that, do you realize He watches us? He is engaged with us. He's not some idol God, some far-off God that is hoped to be someday. No, He is literally the God that is within us. The God that is with us. Jesus was called Emmanuel, God with us. As I was praying about this message, He just kept speaking to me about we are in relationship. And I think that's why He was impressing upon me that the church is a family. It is a relational aspect of the Godhead, of the church, is to reflect God. The love that He has for one another, the aspects of dying, laying a life down, valuing others. That's what we're intended to be as the church. The most beloved, what does He call the church? His bride. He's waiting for that pure and spotless bride. I think we've got some washing to do and some ironing to do, but He doesn't see us as that wrinkled, dirty bride. He sees us as pure, as beloved. That's how He sees us. See, God sees us with the eternity, not what's behind us. He sees what is in front of us. And when I was putting this message together, I just kept seeing, He goes, do you realize God looks for us? He brought me to the story of Hagar. And it's a pretty powerful story. It's only about 10 verses. But to understand the power, the transformation that happens with Hagar. Because see, one of our deepest needs, and I've talked about to know and to be known, but do you know one of our greatest needs is to be seen? Have you ever gone to a party and you don't know anybody? It's like, I don't like going to parties where I don't, or a gathering. It doesn't have to be a party. It could be just a group and you don't know anybody. And then somebody goes out and says, I know, hey, hi, how you doing? I know you. It is like, whoa, I belong. They know my name. Why do you think one of my favorite shows, sorry, it was Cheers. Where everybody knows your name. And I don't want to be Norm, but man, how good does that feel when you walk in a room, Norm, James. Not to be at the bar, but I mean, to be seen, to be acknowledged and recognized. Why do you think we have award shows? Why do you think you have MVPs? Our world is known to be recognized. We have a heart, a desire to be seen. And I've made fun of this generation. They've come up, well, I need to be heard and I need to be seen. They speak it out loud. We were in the generation where we wouldn't say it out loud. We just inside died on the inside if we weren't seen. And when we're not recognized, right, we kind of shrink. Oh, yeah, they didn't see me. I think some of the most well-known people have some of the smallest lives because if they don't get recognized, that becomes who they are. And the story of Hagar shows me that God, He sees us. He sees us, every one of us, because He's valued. That's how much value He places upon His children. I see each one of my children for who they are. It's hard sometimes. but I love them for who they are, not who I want them to be, not because they've made good choices, and I don't hate them because they made bad choices. I want to see them for who they are. And I think that's what this story just struck me as this woman is the first one to recognize God. Because that is our deepest desire, is to be noticed, to know we're cared for, that we are loved. I said to know and to be known. To know that you're not alone. And what's interesting in Genesis 16, God gets a name. El Roi, the God who sees. Genesis 16:1 says, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maid, slave, whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, now, behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Is that not like a little bit of a asterisk that says, God is in this, but we're going to fix it? Please go into my maid. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. And Abram, did he seek the Lord? No. Listen to the voice of Sarai. Wow, this sounds like the garden all over again, doesn't it? After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife Sarai took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, slave, and gave her to her husband Abram as his wife. Think about this. Abraham has had this promise, right? And he spoke this promise to Sarai, saying, Sarah, we're gonna have this huge descendants that can't even be, but even Abram got to the point where Eliezer in Damascus is going to be he was actually a servant in his house. He's going to inherit everything. We lose sight of the promise, right? Now again, even this aspect of giving this maid or slave that was an accepted behavior back then. They owned the slaves. To let the name to continue on, if the wife was barren, they would do that to keep the name going. So it's not like what we'd say, hey, it was part of a custom that they actually had in that time. So she was trying to what? Fix it. It says, he went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was displeased in her sight. So now Hagar says, look at me. I got the bump. And so she starts to despise her mistress. But Sarah says to Abram, may the wrong done me be upon you. I gave my maid into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her sight. May the Lord judge between you and me. I don't know about that one. I don't think I'd be speaking those words if I was Sarai. It was my idea, but it went bad. But Abram said to Sarai, behold, your maid is in your power. Do with her what is good in your sight. So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. So she chose to be harsh, to basically mistreat this individual that you were entrusted to as a slave. It wasn't, historians believe that Hagar may have been given to Abram when he separated from Pharaoh, because it notes that she's an Egyptian. She would not normally be in this. But Abram's saying, it's your maid. I gave her to you, and you get to do what you want with her. And she mistreats her. Hagar's pregnant with Abram's child, right? She's a servant, a slave. She's been sexually used and verbally abused. She didn't ask for this. How many of us can look at some of the things in our lives and go, God, I didn't ask for this? Hagar, she didn't ask for it. What began as this human attempt to fulfill God's promises. How many times have we tried to fulfill God's promises on our own? Well, if God's not going to do it, if it's not him, it's me. Sarai mistreated Hagar. She treated her harshly. And literally it means abusive. When you read the translation of what the Hebrew means, she's abusive. It's not like, oh, I think you're getting fat. It is literally abusive, like making her, punishing her. Hagar fled from her presence. She's been rejected. She's been abused. She's alone now, and she runs into the wilderness. Does that sound familiar? The wilderness is where people go when things don't work out right. When things don't go according to plan. Sometimes it's a wilderness of grief, of loss, of betrayal, of disappointment. My who? Oh, yeah, I might want to turn it on. There we go. How about that? Of disappointment. We literally have unanswered prayers, and that wilderness just beckons. When we say the world is not what we want it to be, and we're disappointed, we're alone, we run into that wilderness. You can go into the wilderness of whatever you choose. You can fill in the blank. But what's interesting is verse 7 says, now the angel of the Lord found her by the spring water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Sur. The Lord came looking for her. Hagar was not looking for God. She didn't go into the wilderness going, man, I'm going to go have this wilderness experience. I'm going to go seek God in the wilderness. No, she was running. It says literally that she ran as far as she could. There's not much water in the wilderness. God was looking for her. Before she cried out, before she prayed, before she knew what to do, God found her. Sometimes I think we wonder, does God even see us? Does God know what we're going through? Does he see the tears, the trials, the struggles? Does he see the successes that we have? Does he really? Has he forgotten me? Has he cast me out? Has he forgotten? See, I love this because when I was talking about the communion, about Jesus understood this, and he invaded his own creation to come looking for us. So does God see my tears? Does God know my struggles? Jesus is the answer. Because why? He understood us. God sees us in our pain. Think about the woman with the hemorrhage. She was an outcast. She struggled for 12 years. That's a long wilderness. She had been overlooked by a society. She had been hidden. She couldn't be seen in public. She was not to be seen in public. But in the middle of the crowd, he is thronged by people. She touches the hem. And he says, who touched me? What? He's looking for her. I love that about it. He just stopped. And they say, everybody's touching you. He goes, no, I want to see her. I am looking for the one. For that one. He noticed her. He took sight of her. And healing happened. God sees individuals, not just the crowds. And I love this. How about when Mary and Martha, they're mourning Lazarus? Jesus sees their grief. Literally, it says he saw their grief. Jesus wept. He didn't go, wow, that's too bad. He is engaged. He sees. He experiences it with us. He felt their grief. Do we understand? He sees he's with us. Hebrews 4:15 says, do we not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses? He experienced it all. He became one of us, and he understands what it's like to hurt. He understands what success is. But he knows what it's like to be unseen. I think on that cross when he said, God, why have you forsaken me? It's almost like God turned his back on him. He could not look upon him. He understood. And I think about the shepherd. And we sing about, I love that the reckless love of God, that he leaves the 99 to go after the one. But see, what I think about a shepherd, the shepherd notices when a sheep is missing. The shepherd is looking. He's tending his sheep. Even if the sheep wanders off, the sheep doesn't know it's lost. Sheep are pretty dumb. That's why he calls it sheep. The sheep doesn't know where the shepherd is. The shepherd is looking and watching. He knows exactly where that sheep is, and he goes after him. I mean, God knows exactly where we are. He knows exactly. He hasn't lost us, and we aren't lost. He sees us. He sees us. ROI. God sees the person others ignore. And I thought about this. Hagar she was seen as a slave, as a vehicle for somebody else's gain. Sarai wanted a family. Sarai wanted a son, wanted an heir. Abram wanted an heir. She was seen as a slave. She was seen as a foreigner. Why do you think that? I think it's interesting that they label her as an Egyptian in Canaan. She was despised. Sarai saw her as a problem. I got to get rid of this problem that Abraham created. She was an outsider. She was rejected. God saw a valued person with promise and called her by name. Hagar was labeled, right? Think about this. In this society, she had very little status. I mean, none. She's a woman, she's a slave, she's a foreigner. I mean, she is nothing. She has no status. But see, God sees beyond those labels. He sees sons and daughters. He sees image bearers. He sees the promise that he's placed inside of his creation. That's his workmanship. That's what he sees. Not the labels that the world want to place upon you. Not the labels we put on ourselves. Think about this. She becomes the first person in Scripture to name God. This slave, this woman, this foreigner, lowest society, she has the first noted name for God, ROI. She called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are a God who sees." And think about, no other king, we don't read anybody else, no prophets, kings, nobody's named God. She names him. Why? She's experienced. She's had an encounter. She's been transformed. An overlooked, used, abused slave girl encounters God and declares he is ROI, the God who sees me. It reveals God's heart. My goodness, he's been looking after his creation since the beginning. He's been searching. He's been looking. He's been watching over. He watches over his word, right? Are we not word? The word. Jesus was the word that became flesh. He watches over. He specializes in seeing people others overlook. He does. Throughout history. Think about it. Gideon, did he see Gideon? He saw him when he was threshing. He called him a mighty warrior, and Gideon's not me. That's not how I see myself. God sees him. God saw Abram as the father of nations. God saw David as a king. I mean, he sees every aspect. Jesus saw, and I love this when I started to look through some of these examples. Jesus saw the woman caught in adultery. He could have easily walked away and let her be stoned. But he saw the redemption that would come to this woman's life. He saw the children that the disciples said, get away. He says, no. Let them come to me. I want to see them. I see them as the children. In Mark 10, I love Bartimaeus. He is literally crying out, right? The crowd says, shut up. You're to be unseen. That sounds right for a blind man, right? But Jesus stopped. He stopped. He stood still. Everybody ignored Bartimaeus until Jesus says, come here. I see you. Come here. And I love that Bartimaeus threw off his cloak and ran. He's blind. Have you ever closed your eyes and tried to run down the street? But God stops for those that the world just goes past, that rushes past. We live a life of just a blur, of seeing faces kind of come across a screen. It's like watching a movie at high speed. We don't see people. We see situations. We know glimpses, and that's how we label people. Usually by context. I love this story about the widow of Nain, the city that Jesus comes into, and I'm going to read this quickly, this verse from Luke 7:11. It says, soon afterwards, he went into the city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. The crowds love Jesus, but he sees individuals every time. He's not wowed by the crowd. Now, as he approached the gates of the city, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. That means she's destitute. She's on the street now, because in that day and age, she would have no property. She's been widowed and now no son. Pretty destitute. And a sizable crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her and said, do not weep. And he came up and he touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt. And he said, young man, I say to you, arise. The dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. You know what's interesting is nobody asked him to go pray for this kid that was dead. Nobody said, Jesus, go heal him, raise him up. He intervened on his own. The mother didn't ask. The disciples didn't come to say that. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her. Compassion moved him towards her pain. And I think God knows what we're going through. He sees what we have, and it moves. He moves. A lot of times we run the other direction. We're trying to escape when God's pursuing us. Luke 10:19, when Zacchaeus was sitting in a tree, the world saw a tax collector, the worst of the worst. Jesus saw a redeemed life that would bring transformation. He spoke one word, and Zacchaeus was transformed. He saw him. You know, I think about have you ever been ignored? It's probably one of the hardest things. I mean, if you're in a room and everybody's talking and you're the only one sitting there, have you ever been ignored? It hurts. It hurts. We try to hide it. We kind of act around. We're going. Fortunately, today we have phones, so I just go on my phone. Okay, nobody's talking to me. I'm just going to go on my phone. Being ignored is probably one of the worst things we could do to another. Have you ever felt like your contributions are just unseen? They don't matter. How about, have you ever had a broken heart? God sees us in every aspect. Have you been diagnosed with a sickness? God sees us. He's always there. I think there's nothing worse than that sense of feeling forgotten. I remember one time I was on a Little League baseball team. And it was an all-star game, actually. And at the beginning of the game, they call out the team, out of the dugout. So you run out onto the baseline and you stand there before you do the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we still do that nowadays? Little League used to. And so I remember sitting there and they're calling out all my teammates. I'm sitting in the dugout. The coach is out there on the baseline. Everybody is on the baseline. And I'm sitting in the dugout because my name was never called. And I just sat there. And it was like, until the coach said, "Bellino," to the whole crowd. "Get out here." You go from goat to feeling, to like, oh, okay, I'm back on the team. Being forgotten, He has never forgotten you. If we've forgotten a child, they have trauma. We still talk about our son that says he was forgotten in the back of our car. We had 4 kids. He wasn't, though. That was the whole, but the perception was he was hiding in the back. We had a big Suburban. He was behind the 3rd seat. We didn't see him. Well, she didn't. I'm not.
But all of a sudden I see
Okay.
a round face.
But in his mind, he was forgotten. And we had to break off some spiritual damage that was done there. But being forgotten, see, I think that is the enemy wants you to feel forgotten. That's the isolation aspect of feeling forgotten. If the enemy can isolate us, that forgotten, it's a powerful, powerful experience. But what's interesting is God sees more than just our circumstances. I love in verse 8, it says, the angel of the Lord asks Hagar. He doesn't say, "Hey, lady. Hey, foreigner. Hey, servant." It's Hagar, servant of Sarai. He doesn't shy away from what her purpose is. She's a servant of of Sarai. Where have you come from and where are you going? God's not looking for information here. I think he knows. He's asking, he's actually bringing her to this point of recognition of where you've been, where are you going? But he's bringing into a relationship saying, I'm calling you by name. I have a desire I'm speaking to you. I see you and I want to engage you. That's the relational aspect of God. How many times did Jesus ask questions he didn't need the answer to? God has asked questions throughout Scripture. There's these interactions that he has that it engages. It brings us into the relationship. He knows the answer. It's not like he's looking for information. God was inviting that reflection. He sees not where she is or who she is, right? Where she came from, what happened to her, he knows all that. But he wants her to recognize what she's gone through. Sometimes we deny where we are, what's happened to us. Sometimes, it doesn't matter. That didn't hurt. They forgot me, but that's okay. They spoke those words, that's okay, I don't know. Where she was headed, he had to say, where are you going? Wanted her to know, where are you going? Because she was lost. God sees the whole story. He wanted her to have a glimpse, almost like sometimes we have to stop and say, where am I? Where am I going? It's kind of like the epiphany where God was showing me about what are we? The church. Sometimes we have to stop. I think about, do we see the whole? We lose sight of the forest because the trees get in the way. God sees the whole story. I think he says, I know the end from the beginning. I get all that, but sometimes we don't. We think, man, look at the size of this tree right in front of me. I can't get around it. It's there for a purpose. It's part of the forest. And so I think, he sees the whole book, whereas a lot of times we're in the first chapter, the second chapter, the third chapter. He knows what happens at the end on chapter 25, but we think we just can't get past chapter 3. He sees the entire book. See, Elroy sees in our pain and suffering. He sees it all. He sees the good, but he really, I think a lot of times when things are good, we don't look for God. But he's still looking at us. He's still looking for us. God sees you in your pain, in confusion, in suffering. Proverbs 25:21 says, for your paths are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all your paths. So if we're heading into the wilderness, guess what? He knows that path. Every wilderness has a path out, too. Sometimes we just camp out in the wilderness. We're not supposed to build in the wilderness. El-Roi sees you when you feel abandoned. That's one of the worst feelings. Forgotten or abandoned. Why do you think we have such an issue with our foster care system? I mean, these kids grow up abandoned, house to house. Adoption is difficult. Why? Because they feel they've been abandoned. But you know what's interesting? God says we are adopted into his family because we were abandoned. We have to break that sense of abandoned. God sees you when you feel alone and think that no one cares. You can just hear the enemy. God doesn't care about that. God doesn't care about you. Nobody cares. Nobody sees you. You're all alone. Separation, being alone, again, enemy. Isolation is the greatest punishment, right? And to feel alone, it's brutal. I remember one time I was like maybe 10. And I was playing junior tackle football. And we had practice at one of the schools outside of in Rubidoux. I lived in Riverside, California. And we had practice, and it just got dark, waiting to be picked up. Nobody showed up. I'm like, okay. I'm looking around. Again, more issues, okay? And I'm like, nobody's here to pick me up. So I'm going to walk home. I have never felt so alone in my life. Walking down a busy highway, 2-lane highway, cars are, I'm walking home, carrying my shoulder pads and my helmet. I'm walking in my cleats. 3 miles is not far, but when you're 10, that is like a marathon. And I've never felt so alone. I mean, my parents, they got things crossed and didn't realize I was at practice because my brother dropped me. It happened. But to feel alone when you're walking down and there are things flying by, you're like trying not to get hit. People don't see you. It's dark. We don't have, that experience brings you to understanding what it's like to walk alone. But God he watched over me. I got home. I was 10 years old. Could you imagine that today? He watches over us, even when we feel alone or abandoned. Psalm 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Wow. Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Wish I had that one walking down the street. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. It doesn't even say I am the God, the God Almighty. I am your God. It's personal. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's the God that sees. He sees the tears cried in private. He sees all of those struggles. He sees when nobody hears us, when nobody sees us, when the world just seems to be crashing down, when we feel like we're forgotten, we've fallen apart. He sees us. When nobody applauds, because nothing escapes his attention. Do you realize that he has always attended toward us? I lose attention really fast. My kids, hey, Dad, I was talking to you. Oh, yeah. I got distracted. He never gets distracted. He is always attending towards us. God knows your name and your story. He knew Hagar. He called her by name. He knew where she had been, where she was going. He knew the promise that he had for her. But you know what's interesting is being seen brings identity. It brought her identity, but what did it bring for her as well? God's identity. Identity is powerful. Being seen brings identity. Verse 8, Hagar, servant of Sarai. God knew her name and called her by it. This slave, Egyptian, all of the other things. Hagar. And it says, where have you come from and where are you going? God knew, but he wanted Hagar to know that he knew. You know that you know. He wants him to know that. In John 1, 47 to 50, Jesus saw Nathanael before Philip called him. You were under the fig tree. Jesus sees him before he ever met him. He's already looking. I mean, that's powerful. In Psalm 139, oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. God knows your past. He knows your failures. He knows your successes. He knows your diagnosis. He knows our fears. He knows our purpose, our dreams, our future. Because nothing surprises him. A lot of things surprise me. Nothing surprises God. In Matthew 10, 29 to 31, it says, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Some of us, it's easy. Sorry. But if they're numbered, I mean, think about that. If God knows the number of your hairs, he certainly knows the burdens on your heart or what you're going through or the purpose that you bear, that you're carrying. Because God doesn't just see Hagar, he speaks to her. He speaks to her. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. He speaks to her. He speaks a promise and a future and a hope into her life, a legacy. God is amazing. In that wilderness, God speaks hope. But you know what's interesting, though? God, he's speaking this hope before her circumstances change. Did you get? He told her to go back and submit to Sarai's authority. How many of us would do that? God, fix my situation. I'm not going back there. That's over. I'm done with that. The wilderness wasn't over. She was in there for a long time. Sarai didn't change. Do you think she stopped despising her because she ran away? She was still pregnant. She came back and birthed that child. The problems weren't solved, but God gave her a promise, a future, and a hope. See, and today we want Jehovah microwave. That's my own creation. That God who works instantly. That's what we want. We want immediate deliverance. That's our desire, right? Just stop the pain. Just fix it, God. Change her. Hagar could have said, well, do you not know? But Sarah did this, Sarai did that. Change her, Lord, then I'll go back. We want God to immediately step in and fix things. But God gives immediate presence. That's what, every time when I read through the scriptures of people going through difficulties, whether they're in the flames of a furnace, God, his presence comes. Gideon, God's presence comes. David, God's presence comes. Peter and Paul, God's presence meets them. Doesn't take them out. How many letters did Paul write from prison? He should have said, God, deliver me from prison. Why? How many shipwrecks? How many difficulties did he go through? His presence was with him. Sometimes we just want the deliverance to happen the way that we desire it. Otherwise, we complain about it. See, God gives us that presence. His presence sustains us until the promise is fulfilled. His promises are fulfilled. He doesn't fall short of any promise. But sometimes we have to deal with the presence of God in that place where we don't see the promise. We may not feel the promise. He sees us. Because it's about relationship with him and who he is. God knows. He knows we got to fight through the wilderness. He knows where we're going. Hagar's circumstances did not change instantly. They didn't. It doesn't even say that they improved. It doesn't say all of a sudden Sarai and they were best buds and they're having, enjoying life together. Not so much. Her perspective changed. She had gone into that wilderness alone, but now she says, I am not alone. God sees me. He's here. His presence. See, the miracle wasn't the promise. Again, generations and descendants. It was literally the encounter, the presence of God. Changed everything. She still had a life that was she was still a slave. Well, she was still a woman. She was still pregnant. She still had all of those things that we talked about that were labeled, everything. Nothing changed except her perspective of who God is. Her identity changed. My God, I am valued by the Father. He sees me. He knows me. When you know God sees you, that fear, it loses its grip. Rejection loses that authority that it has. Loneliness loses the power. Loneliness, isolation, rejection, all of those things, because the creator of the universe knows your name and sees you fully. That's the beauty of it. As I talked about the masks of being known, he knows us fully. He sees us fully. See, many wounds are not physical. They come from feeling unseen. a lot of those wounds, the unseen sacrifices, God, the unrecognized pain, unspoken grief. Sometimes we grieve in silence. Sometimes the church, we're not allowed to have those kind of feelings, or, everything has to be happy and upbeat when you walk in the door, because otherwise you're not highly favored and blessed and all of those other things that we expect. We hide disappointments. Even David, he says, you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. That's the God who sees. That's the God that we worship for the mercy that he has. That is the God who has so much love for us that he sees it. He understands. He's with us. He's collecting those tears. No, not one tear escapes his attention. Not one. See, religion sees behavior, and that's literally where I can't stand, is we want to behave according to our religion. Jesus sees hearts. Why do you think his biggest struggle was with the Pharisees, with the religious? Because his heart was for those that were being left out, abandoned, unseen. That was his heart. When God sees us, he doesn't expose us to shame. Again, like the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, he didn't expose her for shame. He exposes us to bring healing, to restore us to him. See, when I think about being seen, it produces security. Again, being seen by your father. I always thought about this. Man, you want dad to see you. When I was a kid, it was always wanting to know dad. Where's dad? Is dad here? Did he see me? We knew it was safe when dad was around. Mom was loving, no doubt, but if things were going south, we wanted dad. But when we're seen by our Father, we have a sense of security. And so when I think about this, that fear grows by believing that we're alone. The enemy sold us this bill of goods, that it's better to be alone. But God never leaves his children. He never leaves. 2 Chronicles, and I love this, when I was reading this again, 16:19, it says, "For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him." Do you realize his eyes aren't searching to condemn you? Did he condemn Hagar? I mean, did he condemn David? He caused the murder of a husband. He took a wife. He did a lot of bad things. But he's searching not to condemn. See, religion wants you to be condemned by what your actions, your behavior. Do better. Work harder. He is looking to strengthen us. Is that not what he brought to Hagar in the desert? He gave her strength to return, strength to move forward in the promise that he had given her. Because, see, God's gaze towards his children is not one of disgust. He doesn't sit up there going, "Man, James did that again. That's gross. These kids, I just can't get them in line. What a waste." He does not look at us in disgust, but he says one of redeeming love. That's the look that he has. And I use this little clip here. It says, "And Jesus looking at him loved him." And do you know who he's talking about? Any ideas? The rich young ruler. The rich young ruler. We cast him out as, this bad guy that just loved wealth so much. Jesus, before he spoke those words, he looked at him and he loved him. He still brought truth. Truth in love. He looked at him and he felt love for him. Before the correction was compassion. God loved Hagar, but he still had to correct her to go back. Sometimes we don't like that. We want the hyper grace love model that says we don't have to worry about sin. We don't have to change. We don't have anything. He's just going to love us. And I think that story about the rich young ruler tells us he always loves first. Doesn't the scripture say he loved us first? We love because he loved us first. Think about this. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. But see, Jesus saw beyond that failure. He saw totally, he wasn't looking at Peter as a failure. You're a 3 strikes, you're out, Peter. You loser. He saw beyond that. He saw him as the rock. He called him Petros, rock. He saw his future. He saw a shepherd. He saw where others saw weakness. No, it doesn't say any of the other disciples denied Christ, but they all ran. But Peter, he denied him 3 times. And you know what's interesting? It was Peter was the one that Satan asked to sift. And upon him, the church would be established. God likes to sift those that he's going to use. He allows it. God allowed Peter to be sifted. But he saw what others saw as a weakness about this flamboyant guy that got finally brought low. God saw the strength in him, but it had to be in his strength, not himself. God always sees beyond who we are into who we are becoming. Romans 8:29, for those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. He sees us as his sons. He sees the finished work before we do. God sees destiny. He sees purpose. He sees where we are, who we are becoming. We're becoming more like his Son. We become more like him. He sees that destiny, that purpose, where a lot of times we just see defeat. Peter could have been defeated. Judas was defeated. He could have been redeemed. Possibly. He was predestined. But God always sees the future. He sees who we are. And he doesn't shy away. Jesus revealed the Father. I think I said in 2 weeks ago, the purpose of Jesus was to reveal the Father. He says, Philip, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. He came to reveal the Father. Why? So that we would know him. That we would see him for who he is. See, the church is called to do the same thing. That's when I started today about talking about the church. We are called to be the representatives to show the world who God is. Jesus says, you are my body. You reflect me. To know him. People are desperate to be seen. You can walk down the street. When you call somebody by name, they just light up. We're desiring to be a part of a greater group. We love to be identified individually, but being part of a group, being part of a family, makes us seen. It gives us hope. The greatest ministry, maybe, I like this, maybe the greatest ministry is simply seeing someone.
Amen.
Not prophesying, not healing, delivering, doing all that. Maybe just seeing someone. Seeing when someone's lonely. If they're lonely. Stepping in. Seeing when they're hurting. Do we take the time to see them? To know their hurts? Do we see the ones that are forgotten? or feel forgotten. The ones that feel like they've been overlooked all their lives. Jesus saw those that were overlooked. He called those that were of ill repute. His disciples were not those that were well-known fishermen, tax collectors, the worst, some of the worst of the worst. See, love notices. Love sees. Compassion pays attention. There's a cost. Kingdom people refuse to walk past those whom society ignores. It's so easy to walk past people, especially if we don't think there's any value in them. What are they going to do for me? I don't know them. I don't care to know them. They're hard. I don't even want to get to know them. We walk past. When we know we're seen by the Father, we become people who see others. Because, see, we're going to operate out of our own brokenness. If we feel that we are unseen, if we feel that we are alone, we feel that we're overlooked, guess what? I can't see others because I'm still focused on me. We have to break that. That name, ROI, it actually comes from a word that means to see, perceive, to notice, to understand, to regard with care. See, God's not seeing, it's not passive observation. God sees and he understands. He sees and he cares. He sees and he responds, calls Hagar by name. El-Ra'i is not the God who watches. And I think sometimes we think, God, you're not even looking. Or sometimes we don't want him to look. But sometimes we just think he's just not here. He doesn't care. We're here. We're going to do the best we can. It's not the God who watches. He is the God who notices and understands. And he moves towards us. He has pursued us since the beginning. He continues to pursue us with his love to the point of sending his Son to pursue us even further into eternity. The God that Hagar met and named in the desert, it's a personal, intimate God. He loved Hagar and he loves you. Jesus reminded us in Matthew 6:26, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? We think God isn't going to meet our needs. We think we have to build our own barns so that we have something to carry. We've got our clothes and our food, and we need success and all of these things. Are you not much more valuable than the birds of the air? See, El-Ra'i sees you and he hears you. I love this in 1 Peter 3:12. Assures us. It assures us, for the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. And he hears. And his ears are attentive to their prayer. God's not some dumb, blind idol, some graven image, some picture, or some word on the page. That's not who the God that we serve is. He is an active, pursuing God. See, I think when she said, you're the God that sees, do you know what shifted? She came out of Egypt where all of the idols were what? They were worshiped. We see them. We don't want them to see what we're doing. She came out of an idol-worshiping society where they were dumb gods. They were images. They couldn't see me. She knew that they couldn't see her. This God was different. This God can see. It's not an image. It's not a foreign, universal entity that's somewhere else. It's not the God that created and forgot, left us to our own devices. She understood this was a different God that says that nothing can separate us from his love. Nothing. Have you ever felt alone? I think about Hagar in that wilderness. The sense of feeling alone. But the God of the universe had eyes upon her. And the God of that same God has eyes upon you and me. The enemy says, man, God doesn't see you. Nobody knows your name. Nobody cares. Nobody knows your struggles. Nobody cares about your tears. Nobody cares. God cares. God sees. See, even in the wilderness and the pain and the rejection, God sees you. And he knows you. And he meets you where you are. Whether you're on the mountain or in the wilderness in the valley. He meets us where we are. I know that we can feel forgotten. We can be wondering if God even notices. I mean, I look around, God, do you see anything? Today's message is that God sees you. And it is his love that he sees. That you should see in the loving God. Not the condemnation and the judgment that the enemy wants to try to place upon us. He is the God of mercy and grace and love. And his name is ROI, the God who sees you. That's the power of the living God. It's exciting. That's the one that we want to bring into the family of others to know that they are seen, that they know the living God. That's what the church is intended